Hello everyone, I'm a little unwell, apologies for the audio. This pattern couldn't wait though. I had seen a sweater pattern on Etsy, I think, that incorporated these tulips into their design, and I just was convinced that I could figure out how to make it. I want to show you my process today, so hopefully you can make some for yourself. I think they're pretty cute. What do you think? I'm going to show you how to make this one today. After you're done making these, you could use them as some coasters, which I think is a pretty cute idea. That's what I'm going to be doing with mine. Enjoy. I will see you soon. I'm going to be using a 3.5mm crochet hook today. I'll have a pair of scissors with me, optionally have some measuring tape and stitch markers close by should you need them, a darning needle to weave tail ends in, and the yarn I'll be working with today are these hard-wearing 100% cotton worsted weight skeins from Knit Picks called Dishy. I'll show you how I'll be transitioning through 3 of their colours in this project. To get started, I'll make a slip knot in chain 25 with my A colour, which is this orange skein called Clementine. The last chain will be my turning chain. May be obvious, but don't hesitate to count your stitches to be sure. For row 1, work a single crochet into each stitch to total 24 stitches in the row. I'll be using the single crochet stitch throughout this project. You're welcome to work them into the back loops of your chains. I prefer to work them into the back bumps for a neater edge. I'm going to focus this tutorial on the colour work aspect, so I'll speed through the rest of this row and meet you at row 2 when we introduce our B colour. For row 2, I'll start with 10 single crochet in my A colour, followed by 4 single crochet in my B colour, and 10 again in my A colour. To make sure my 11th stitch will be in this green colour called jalapeno, I'll do my last yarn over for my 10th stitch in my B colour. I'll do this by forming a loop and then pulling through with it. When I do change over to my B colour, I'll be carrying my A colour and working over it at the back here. Continue carrying yarn for an additional 2 to 3 stitches when colour changes are made. I'll follow the same technique on the 4th stitch in my B colour to change back to my A colour. Because I've carried my non-working yarn, this should be a simple dropping and picking up of the colour I need, and then using my A colour to pull through all the loops on my hook. I'll carry my yarn for another 2 to 3 stitches after having made my colour change, then I'll drop it and continue to work in my A colour to finish off my row. For row 3, I'm facing the back of my work and I've worked ahead with my A colour. I want to work 9 stitches with it. As I make my 9th stitch, I'll pick up my B colour and move my A colour out of the way. In the following 6 stitches in B, I'll make sure to carry my A colour again. I'm currently facing the back side of my work, so be mindful that the strands of working yarn should face this side. When I change back to my A colour, I'll make sure my B colour is tucked out of the way again, and then I'll carry it for another 2 stitches to make sure it's ready to go for the next row.
eyes closed, I need a breather. Got lost in the B-roll. We let all the wind blow to learn how the world goes. We didn't know how to move on.
Now I'll complete my row and meet you at row 4, ready to change into my B color again. For rows 4 and 5, I want to work 8 stitches in my A color, 8 stitches in my B color, and then 8 again in my A color. I'm facing the front of my work and I've worked ahead in my A color, making sure I pick up my B color as I work through my stitches.
So well. In a voice memo from years ago, we were laughing about some...
Feel free to gently pull on your non-working color when you first make a color change to make sure your tension feels consistent. Now I'll continue for another 8 stitches in my B color.
Faces, except for on the internet, where I'll never really know what's going on behind their smiles. I mean, I guess I could check in once in a while, but those friends are growing up, and there's no time for us to pretend we'd stay in touch, 'cause everybody knows it.
Back to A, I'll make sure to again carry my non-working color for an additional 2 to 3 stitches. I find it creates cleaner color changes to do this, however I'll save on yarn by just carrying it for a few stitches as opposed to the remainder of the row. Now repeat this for row 5.
They don't need to know. Still on my phone, I'll look back at the pictures and I'll reminisce when I'm alone.
Row 6 now, we'll be creating a parting between the tulip stem and its leaves. This requires a few more color changes in the row. I'll start by working to my 7th stitch in my A color. For my B color, I'll only add another 3 stitches. Now I'll only work in my A color for 1 stitch, so make sure that to complete the stitch, you then pull through all loops with the B color again. The 2 stitches in my B color will become the stem of the tulip, so the color work after the stem will be mirroring what we've just worked on. That means I'll change back to my A color for 1 stitch, and then 3 in my B color, and then 7 stitches again in A.
'Cause everybody knows it will never be the same. We move on and people change. Yeah, those friends are growing up.
For row 7, we're facing the back of our work and we'll continue to increase the space between stem and leaves, starting with 7 stitches in my A color. Now 4 stitches in my B color. And now 1 in A and 2 in B. It can definitely be a little tedious when there are these short sequences of color changes. Bear with me, this is the worst of it, I'd say. After the 2 stitches in my B color, which is the stem, there's again a mirroring of the color changes. For row 8, I'll start with 6 stitches in my A colour. The theme is to continue increasing the space between stem and leaves, so after my 6th stitch in my A colour, I'll work 3 stitches with my B colour. Now the 2 stitches in my A colour will provide that spacing between elements. And back to my B colour for 2 stitches to complete the stem of my tulip. Now I'll mirror the colour work after this point. Let's meet at row 9. We're facing the back of our square again for row 9. I've worked ahead in my A colour for 5 stitches. We'll continue to increase the spacing between stem and leaves again. After this row, we'll introduce our third colour. I'll be using an off-white colour called Swan that'll act as my tulip petals. Okay, and then I'll continue to mirror this pattern on the other side of my row and then get ready to meet you for row 10. I should add, as you work, your yarn may tangle. Be sure after each row to detangle, and that'll put you in good stead as we gear up to introduce another colour. Row 10 will see us add on a third colour to stitch up the tulip's petals. Start by working through both A and B colours, and then as I add my C colour, I'll make sure to carry both non-working colours behind my work. My C colour will span 4 stitches. After pulling up my loops, I'll pull through with my A colour and then the pattern mirrors itself again. Row 11 sees the widening of the tulip petals, as well as the last row to use our B colour.
My friend nostalgia, I found you when I heard the sweet sound of the ones who I once knew so well. In a voice memo from years ago, we were laughing about some nonsense. Oh, how I miss those friends. Circumstances made it so that I'll never see their faces, except for on the internet, where I'll
The next 8 rows is a repeat of 7 stitches in our A colour, 10 stitches in C, and then back to 7 stitches in our A colour. For this sequence, just be mindful of carrying your non-working colour and you'll be good to go. I'll be working ahead to row 20. See you there. At row 20 now, we've worked through the height of our tulip petals. Now we'll begin to taper off to suggest a few individual petals. Row 21 continues with the same theme as the previous row. We've got a few more single stitch colour changes, so be mindful of those. Otherwise, let's work our way through, and after this row our colour changes will simplify. Row 22 starts with 11 stitches in the A colour, followed by 2 in the C colour, and then back to A. For the very last row, row 23, I'm just going to work some single crochet stitches in my A colour and then tie off and weave in my tail ends. That's the pattern. Something I did here, and what you can consider as well, is adding a border around your square in a contrasting colour to provide a bit of polish. I hope you try this pattern in your choice of colourway, or perhaps you incorporate it into a larger project. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or comments. Hope you enjoy giving this pattern a go. Catch you in the next one.